What's up, everyone? Back with another video in the in-depth Discipline Priest Mythic Plus guide, and this is probably going to be the last video in this series. This one's probably going to be a lengthy one, but this one I want to go over each dungeon and specific mobs to be careful for as a Discipline Priest player. This is probably going to be under the assumption you are playing this year talent setup with Schism instead of Twist of Fate. That's pretty much the main one I recommend that people should change depending on what the affixes are. Just for a quick reference, I timed a 19, workshop, timed 19 workshop early this week, and I played Twist of Fate instead just because I knew some of the bosses are going to hit pretty hard, so I played Twist of Fate. And the uptime on that was maybe about 15% to 20% for the overall dungeon, but that percentage of time that it was proccing is when I needed it most. So that's kind of the option, like real-time scenario where you play Twist of Fate instead of Schism. Anyways, back to the video at hand. So I'm going to use the Method Dungeon Tools add-on. Let's start off with a Tall Desire. I'm going to kind of go based on the general pug pulls that I've seen. So we start here, usually go down to Razan. There's really not much going on as a Discipline Priest that any of these mobs you should really be focusing down through Schism. Obviously, if you have a pack like this here, where you have an elite mob with a bunch of little mobs around it, you are going to want to put your Schism where you're going to get the most use out of it on an elite mob instead of the small mobs, because these are most likely going to be AoE down by your party, and you're going to get that full duration of Schism and the healing output and the extra damage on an elite mob. So that's just a general for all dungeons. Just what happens that Tall Desire has that at the beginning. So normally we pull all this, take the obelisk, or take these three in the obelisk. So this pack here, I would actually recommend your Juggernaut is going to be your primary target for your Schism, mainly being because of Merciless Assault. This guy hurts. He does a charge, right here on the screen, charge to an area, inflicting X amount of damage to all enemies within 8 yards. So this is avoidable, but sometimes people are not ready for it. But just because this mob can do a lot of damage, I would recommend putting your Schism on this one. Because he is kind of that priority, big damage to your team if your team's not ready for it. So I recommend putting your Schism on this one because it's a priority mob. You want to bring it down fast. And then we take, for the Blood of the Corruptor Obelisk, you can Schism the show? I don't think so. But you could Schism one of the tentacles, or the blood, doesn't really matter. This little pack here, after you kill the totem, I would highly recommend this would be your Schism target because of how much AoE damage that goes out. So as a Discipline Priest, if you're not ready for that atonement, your atonements aren't ready for all the AoE damage, this is a guy you want down first. You want to avoid all the AoE. Same thing with this pack here. These guys don't matter too much. These guys don't matter too much. Take this obelisk. You go over here. Normally this pack is not pulled, but if this pack is pulled, I would highly recommend, again, Schism is going to be on your honor guard targets. The Witch Doctor can be problematic, but if you have the right stuns and interrupt rotation down, it really is a non-mob, so to speak. These guys the honor guards just do AoE damage that's pretty much unavoidable. So that's going to be your Schism target to get the most value out of that. These two packs, again, nothing crazy going on here. Here, this 4-pack here, I would recommend putting out one of the Witch Doctors because you have 2 of them, and sometimes you might get your interrupts might overlap each other, your stuns might overlap each other. So they're going to do big damage, and they do random target. They randomly hex people, and they randomly hit people with the Venom Blast. So I would highly recommend Schism on one of these, and that's going to be a priority target. And when I say Schism, I kind of mean this is a priority target. So if you are playing Twist of Fate, still the mobs I say to put Schism on I highly recommend that being your priority target to help your team like single down, to help your team like this is the one I want down, to help yourself as Discipline Priest. This is a mob I don't want to deal with anymore because I know it's going to be a lot easier for me to heal when this mob is not here anymore. So that's for that there. Same thing here, elite mob. This is usually skipped. Elite mob. Here, this really doesn't matter. If everyone is standing in melee on top of these guys, they really don't do anything. They pretty much pick whoever has the highest health there, just give them the most value out of. This mob here, or this pack here, I recommend you have the Juggernaut, you have pretty much a smorgasbord of all the mobs in a Taldazar in this one pull. Augur is this is the main kick one. So if you feel like your team's not going to kick or they're going to miss that kick, this can be your Schism target, your priority target. If not, then I would highly recommend Juggernaut for the same reason Juggernaut's applied over here in this first pull. And that's pretty much it for a Taldazar. Let's see what we got next. We got Freehold. Let's see. Do the current week. This is not going to be regarding teaming because teaming is just kind of like, I guess, too in-depth. But same thing applies. If you see a mob I'm talking about not in teaming and you see an extra one of teaming, that's probably just going to be the priority target. Okay, so we're in Freehold. This first 3 pull here sometimes happens, sometimes it's not. I would recommend, honestly, Crack Shot. He randomly shoots people. He throws these grenades. He also stands at range. So the reason I recommend this being a priority because melee, all these other guys minus the Crack Shot are melee, so they're following your tank around. I highly recommend Crack Shot because if you don't have any type of push, any type of displacement of this mob, he's just gonna be standing there, just kind of like picking people off with the shot here. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but it can do just like that weird extra damage you weren't expecting. So while he's out there just trying to snipe your team, you can be sniping him back, making this your priority target. And there's a good chance, from what I've seen, my personal experience, this has always been the mob that has like the highest health. Usually at the end of these pull, like after 10 seconds into the pull, the Crack Shot's usually up 80%, while everyone else is about 20%. So I have Schism. I get the most value out of Schism. He's my priority target. He's the one I'm healing off pretty much. Then you go down the Obelisk. Take the Obelisk all the way over here. Enforcer, Mastiff. The Mastiffs can be, when they do this Bestial Wrath, they can be problematic. So you can pick one of them, or you can pick the Enforcer. They do this backhand, they do Shattering Toss. You know, the Shattering Toss is annoying. Backhand is completely avoidable. So I would recommend picking one of the dogs just because of the Bestial Wrath to be your priority target. So you kill the boss and you come down here. This one is almost always pulled the Iron Enforcer in pug settings anyways. So, I mean, it's just one mob, usually cut it down the bridge. Here it gets a little tricky. I normally pick this one, Iron Tide Oarsman, because Sea Spout, you have 3 red enemies, and all these are non-elite yellow enemies. From what I've seen, a lot of my team just like to see, oh look, there's like 10 mobs here. I'm just going to AoE them down as fast as I can, try and avoid mechanics, or try and avoid interrupting mechanics because I just want to see big overall DPS numbers. So just because I'm in that mindset, I know this mob is the most problematic for me and the whole team because Sea Spout here causes water to violently erupt beneath the feet of enemies, inflicting X amount of frost damage and knocking them into the air. This hurts big time because 1, you get hit for that X amount of damage, and you take that fall damage. And the higher the key, the more damage it does. If it's enraging, you know, all that good stuff. So to me, this is the priority target, just so you can not have to worry about your team not kicking Sea Spout. The same, like you could pick the Duelist. He just does a Duelist dash. He runs it like there's a little swirl where he's about to run to, and it's everything in that path he hits. So if you're standing in that path, you're gonna get knocked down, stunned, or whatever. It's kind of annoying, but to me, from my experience, Oarsman has been the most problematic. So this is my option for priority target. If you're dealing with the Vermin Trapper, I mean, this is obvious. He's the only elite mob there. Rat Traps is a pain in the ass. Rat Traps can be knocked, displaced, or stunned. So highly recommend you try and get your hand in there to disrupt the rat trap. Otherwise, it's big AoE damage if your team gets hit by them. Otherwise, if the rat trap does go out, as the traps are landing, so when the cast happens, the traps land where your teammates were, so everyone just kind of sidesteps. But sometimes in pug settings, you're not in Discord, you don't have any communication, so you might sidestep into where your teammate just was. Now you're taking that damage from that trap instead of your trap. It can get pretty annoying, so this is high priority target in my opinion. Same thing with that pack. Okay, so now we're down here. This all depends on the week, but okay, I can't click. But let me see if I can pick another week. Yeah, here we go. This one is my priority target. Village Rat Bone Scale or Brine Scale. Because of Frost Blast right here. This is something people see, okay, I interrupt Water Bolt, stun Water Bolt, whatever. All your interrupts are wasted, and then now he's trying to cast a Frost Blast after he tried casting Water Bolt about 3 or 4 times. So now Frost Blast is a big frontal cone. 30 yards is huge range. And the chance, depending on which way he is facing, where the tank has him facing, your whole team just got hit with Frost Blast. Now everyone's got a debuff on them, which you can mass dispel. But it's just extra damage that most teams, from what I've seen, are not ready for. So I would highly recommend this being your priority target if it is the week where he is active. Same thing here in this pack. They got 2 of them there. We'll go back to whatever week. You got 2 of them there. Again, highly recommend. These guys are your priority targets. Again, for that main reason that your team might kick all the water bolts, might not have anything up for the Frost Blast there. And then now, depending on which way they're facing, your team is just taking that damage they could have avoided. They just weren't ready for it, but you, as a smart Discipline Priest player, you're ready for it. So this is going to be a priority target. Hopefully you can delete the mob before you have to deal with those Frost Blasts. Let's see, this pack here. Nothing too crazy. The Harpooners are kind of annoying because they pull you in, but it's nothing crazy. Scrapper, Blind Rage, I mean, this can get knocked, stunned, whatever. This one's kind of like, I would just recommend going with whichever mob has the higher health. That's pretty much it. I would just recommend whoever has higher health, that's your priority target. If this thing gets pulled in with everything, this would be your priority target because it does completely avoidable damage, but it just has so much health. And if for whatever reason your team is not paying attention and they don't get out of the avoidable damage, it's big damage. So I would recommend this being a priority target if it gets pulled with anything. So this pack here is about the same as this pack. So again, here we got the Village Rat Brine Scales. I highly recommend those being priority. Anytime there's a Brine Scale in the pack, that is priority target in my opinion. So that's Brine Scale, no Brine Scale, no Brine Scale, Brine Scale down here. Sometimes these all get pulled, or this pack gets pulled. If Brine Scale is active, highly recommend that being your priority target. And that's pretty much it for Freehold. That's pretty much it for Freehold as far as like the current routes are being ran. King's Rest is a pain in the ass. Let's just clear that. Yeah, reset. King's Rest is just a pain. These should be mass dispelled. Okay, so now you got, sometimes you pull all 4 of these Guardians, you pull 3, you pull 2 at a time, whatever. All the Guardians are the same thing. There's no priority over the other one. Again, just highest health mob is your priority target to get the most value out of Schism, and just the most value you get for healing, doing damage. Out of these 2 packs, they're the same. If they get double pulled, Witch Doctor, because of Deathly Chill, Shadowbolt Volley. Most teams forget about Shadowbolt Volley. Most teams don't have an interrupt ready for that. So this is a priority target. Hopefully you can DPS it down before the Shadowbolt Volley goes off. If not, that's big AoE damage to the team. You have to mass dispel, have an Atonement, have a Powered Radiance ready before that cast goes out. So I would highly recommend this guy being your priority target whenever it's in a pack. So if it's just these 2, Witch Doctor priority target. If they're all 4, Witch Doctor. So this 3-pack here, Witch Doctor priority target. This 4-pack, Witch Doctor priority target. Highly recommend it. Just get it out of the way as fast as you can. These guys, they do the gust slash, they spawn little tornadoes around them. It's kind of problematic, but hopefully your tank is smart and is kiting out of those tornadoes, or hopefully your team's just using proper defensives for that. So on to next. Out of these two, really doesn't matter. This is completely avoidable damage. He just jumps and starts slashing forward, like just don't be in front of him. So I would recommend this one, I guess, because he picks a random player and starts shooting. So I would recommend this one be the priority target. This one here, really depends. Blade Storm, melee usually gets hit by that. This, Shadow Bolt. I would say actually this one, Queen Waja, whatever, because of seduction here. I'd recommend that being your Schism or priority target. This one here, I recommend this one. This is actually easily avoidable. So if you have a knock going out, or if you have a knock ready or a pull or something like that while he's casting, or as soon as he starts channeling Channel Lightning, you can just completely avoid that mechanic. Which one is the Axe Barrage? This one. I would recommend Guard Captain Atu being your priority target just because of that Axe Barrage mechanic I just showed. I would recommend him being your Schism or priority target when these three are up. This one here, this 4-pack or 5-pack, King Akul. Recommend that one being your priority target. Sorry. Should have went over the obelisk in the first Ataldazar, but if you have the Fear Mob here, I would just recommend, pretty much for all the obelisks, let's put it this way. The Lieutenant Boss should be your priority target, or if you want to help take down some Mind Flay ads on the Blob, then do that. The obelisks are kind of like dealer's choice, really. If you pull this, obviously it's doing pack. If you pull in all these, just pick whatever has the highest health and get the most value out of your Schism, or just your single target DPS rotation for priority. Here, I personally recommend the Berserker, just because of the Severing Blade here. Because we, as Discipline Priests, can't really handle, like, that's big damage coming in. Like, he's just getting chunked, bleeding for 10 seconds, whoever gets hit by it. Hopefully it's just your tank getting hit by it, but sometimes, like, your tank just can't handle it. Like, they're taking this, and then they're taking this magic damage. But if you can get this mob out of the way first, you don't have to worry about that big dot chunking away at your tank. So I recommend Berserker being your priority or Schism target. Whenever there's a Berserker active in the pool, I highly recommend Berserker, so that's a Berserker. This one here, I just recommend Beastmaster, I guess. Just he randomly shoots people, does Poison Barrage. I'd recommend that one. The Raptors here, unlike this Raptor in this council room, I guess, the Skeletal Hunting Raptor versus the Honored Raptor, these guys can get stunned and knocked, and like you can avoid their mechanic of them doing the frontal slash. You can just push them away. Though this mob here, Skeletal Hunting Raptor, you cannot do anything with it. You just have to get out of its way. Okay, the Brute is obviously usually just pulled by itself, so Brute. Again, if there's a Berserker in the pack, I recommend Berserker. Normally, these are skipped. I've seen some teams pull this one here, this middle pack. And if you have this, I would recommend the Hex Priest. And that is it for King's Rest. And we are on to Shrine of the Storm. This one has a lot going on, but really most of the mobs are the same throughout the whole dungeon. If this all gets pulled, that means one again, right? The same rule applies. One elite and a pack of small mobs. Non-elites, usually you want your elite to be your primary target, your priority target. Temple Attendants, that's your priority target. Pick one and go for it. Spiritualist. I mean, like, see, like these pulls are mostly the same. Like you have like 2 of each when you do the pulls. Normally it's a big pull here. It's this pull, all these little guys. Usually the tank comes down, pull like either 2 or 4 of these, or they'll come down this way, pull this one, pull these 2, and this Shrine Templar. If you get the Templar in a pull, I don't recommend it being your priority target. I recommend Spiritualist because of, where is it? No, not that one. The Templar. These are the ones because of Water Blast and Wash Away. Wash Away is completely avoidable, easy to avoid, but Water Blast is just your tank's usually getting chunked away by magic damage. So If you ever have an attendant in a pull with anything else, I highly recommend your attendant being a priority / schism target. Okay, so we take the obelisk down. Usually it's taken down to around here. And again, there's an attendant in the pack, right? So I highly recommend attendant being your priority target. Down here, you have a 2-pack of just the same thing. Just pick one and go for it. A non-elite, and then in this pack here, you have a non-elite with, or an elite with a bunch of non-elite. So you go elite. Usually these two are pulled together. Sometimes with this 4-pack, depending on what weeks of fixes there are. But just pick one and go for it. These 3 are normally pulled, and we have an attendant in the pack. So we go for the attendant as our priority target. And this 4-pack here, attendant's in the pack, so we go for the attendant. And usually that's pulled, and then usually the obelisk is usually taken to about here. And then, if that's the case, either a 2-pack pull, or a 5-pack pull, either way. There are no attendants in this pack, so I would recommend this guy here, the Gale Caller Apprentice. Reason being, Tempest. He picks a random summons a violent tempest that moves towards the target, right? Gale Shear, just so the target, no. Right here, creates a slicing tornado at an enemy's location. So it just picks like a small little circle, boom, and you can't stand there because you'll be getting hit by Slicing Hurricane. It's completely avoidable, but enough of them in one pack, like you might not have anywhere safe to stand anymore. So I'd recommend picking one of them and just taking them down. Here, you have 2 attendants, so I recommend going for your attendants. This patrol pack, I recommend going for the Gale Caller Apprentice. Usually this is pulled, but again, an elite with non-elite, so you go with that. If this gets pulled with this one, I would recommend, I think I would recommend this one. Yeah, you know what? No, I do recommend the Deep Sea Ritualist because this kick has to be kicked, and if people miss it, then it's damage going out that is easily avoidable. So I'd recommend, yeah, Unending Darkness, kicking or priority target Deep Sea Ritualist. This is one I recommend, 100%. If this thing gets pulled with that one. If you are pulling this all together, again, you have Enforcer, and you have a Deep Sea Ritualist. So I highly recommend going for the Ritualist. Normally this is all skipped. Here, you have 2. I recommend just picking one of these guys because they just do all this extra stuff, like a frontal cone. I don't even know I don't know what that does. Read an opponent's thoughts and intents, increasing dodge chance. Okay, so this is something you can dispel. Consuming Void. This is something you can dispel. So there's a lot of stuff that you can dispel in this pack, and you have 2 of them, so I just pick one and go for the Abyssal Cultist. These guys just do Colossal Slam. That's it. If there's no one in the melee range of it, they'll just start slamming and slamming and slamming. So I just recommend picking one of the casters here, and that's their priority target. Some teams are starting to pull these packs here. Let's see. Touch of the Draw. This is tough. That's actually a tough one. For this one, because there's just so much going on as a Discipline Priest, and I know I can like dispel a lot, like I just feel like I'm like just, oh, dispel this, mass dispel that, you know? So this, I just recommend just picking whatever has the highest health and going for that as being a priority target. Same thing with this pack here. I'd recommend doing that. So if you do pull those, I just recommend just going for highest health mob, and just hopefully your team is doing some good kicks, some good stuns, and you got your massive spells and you have your dispels ready. Okay, so we go inside. Sometimes teams are pulling here. I would just dot a few and run in there and start holy Novaing everything. Get your atonements out, be in melee range with everyone, and you start just go in there and start holy Novaing everything, and you'll see your DPS go up pretty fast with your AoE damage. So now we pull that, and then we're underneath. If you get any eels, just start dotting a bunch of them up. Penance, get your dot out. And then Holy Nova, everything that's in there. Get in with your melee, get your atonements out, and start spamming Holy Nova. This pack here, I would just recommend picking one of these Forgotten Denizens, because if your team misses a freaking kick, that just sucks, and they reset their health all the way to 100%. So if you can pick one of them and just focus your DPS on that and just get it out of the way, You don't have to worry about your team missing kicks. This guy is easily avoidable. Just your tank has got to move. Easy peasy. Alright. Now we're on to Siege of Borealis. Again, elites. With non-elites, there are plenty of them in Siege of Borealis, so I recommend just picking an elite and going for that as your Schism / priority target. The only time I would recommend to not do that is depending on the weeks of fixes, but this mob here, these marksmen, the Molten Slug, it does pretty big damage because it shoots at a random enemy, and if you don't have the proper weak aura to show who's about to get hit, it's kind of hard to plan your atonement for it. So I just recommend, even if there is a marksman, let's see, is there a marksman without a, like if you were to pick this pull here, I would highly recommend marksman being your priority target, just to avoid that random damage to your teammates. Just if you see a marksman, I highly recommend that being your priority target. Highly. Every time you see a marksman, that should be your priority target for the rest of the dungeon. So yeah, this pack here, marksman. This pack here again, marksman. If you do all this, just pick these are non-elites with an elite. So I just recommend the elite again, like normal. If you get these guys here, kill the powder shot. You get the Ashran commander who will bolster them. That can be dispelled, by the way, the bolstering shot. But I do recommend just picking pretty much anything that does random damage to your team. You don't want to deal with as a Discipline Priest because we are proactive, not reactive healers. So if you don't have the proper weak aura, if you're not ready for it, if you're not paying attention to your weak aura, saying like, hey, this guy's about to get hit by whatever, you want to take away the mob who's going to be the most problematic to you, and most, like 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a mob that does random damage, or picks a random player in your team and just does damage to it. So powder shot is that case here. The rest of this dungeon, just usually if there's an elite in this pack, or if there's elite with non-elites, pick the elite. And if you have any of those random people, the people who do randomly select your team, does damage to them, you want them out of the way. Let's see, spotter. It depends if your team's playing for spotter, so maybe that's not the primary target, but normally it kind of would be. Most teams kind of take that spotter and kite it around a little bit to kill like all these non-elite mobs, just do the damage for you pretty much. But it's a very good idea if your team is doing that, and your team is playing for the spotter to do the damage for you guys. He has a lot of health, especially depending on the key level, it goes up. This can be your primary target, like tell your team, hey, don't kill this, if we're going to use spotter, that's fine, but I'm going to use it to heal. Like, don't kill it, I'm going to keep my dot on it, I'm going to keep Schism, I'm going to keep Solace, penance, all that good stuff. This is going to be my target to heal you guys up pretty much. So you can play it like that, really kind of just take some communication between you and your team. Let's see, this pack here, you normally gets pulled, powder shot, I recommend that being your target, powder shot, right? Anytime you have a powder shot, solve the one that does that, shoots at a random enemy, or obviously if you're random teammate for you. This one here, I highly recommend. So you have the spotter there, but Cannoneer, for whatever reason, this frontal cone I've seen takes out like so many people, and it has a 2-second cast. But for some reason, people still just don't get out of its way. Normally, it's the range players who think they're out of range, but look how long that range is. It's a 100-yard range. That should be your priority target, 100%. Ashran Cannoneer should be your priority target, in my opinion. So you do the boss. You come down this way. Let's see, Pillager can be. Yeah, I would say. All these mobs are annoying, right? So you got the Vicious Slobber, 100-yard range again. It's very similar to the Cannoneer as far as just that frontal cone that most people kind of forget about. Banana Rampage, he tosses out bananas, and if you step on it, you just get stunned. I would recommend your Pillager being your priority / Schism target whenever you see it up in a pack. If you don't see it up, let's see. I'd recommend your caster. Highly recommend your caster. If you have a in Siege of Browse, if you have a Bildrat Tempest around in a pack, I highly recommend that being your priority target. Bildrat Pillager in this 3-pack, I highly recommend being that one. So if you're playing with either one, if you have, for whatever reason, your team pulls both of them at the same time, that's just kind of probably this one, because that does the most, has the potential to do the most damage to your team, and you want to do your best to avoid that type of situation. So Pillager, I would recommend if your team happens to pull like a double pull here, or whatever it may be. And then usually the rest of all this is skipped all the way up to the spotters up here. Spotter, same thing. Alright, here we go. Your invaders, just because we cannot dispel this here. Let's see, this one. They're both, okay, both same tooltip. This does big damage to your tank, and we can't do anything to avoid it. I think there are some tanks who can dispel themselves. I think paladins can do that. So if you have paladin, they don't really have to worry about it. But let's assume you're not playing with a paladin or anything optimal like that, and it's just you, and your team is just not paying attention. Ashvan Invader, get rid of this mob so you don't have to worry about your tank just getting chunked. Every time there's an invader in the pack, highly recommend it being your priority target. Highly, highly, highly recommend it being your priority target. Even though this one, has a random, picks a random mob, it doesn't do as much damage as invaders do to your tank potentially. So I just highly recommend your invaders being your priority targets. Especially in this pack here, you got 1 and 2, kill one, then go right for the other one. Highly recommend it. And that is it for Siege of Borealis. Let's see, Temple of Sethralis. Let's go back to the beginning. This one here, I highly recommend being your marksman. It seems like BFA has just done this thing where if there's a marksman in his name or some type of like, if this guy shoots with a gun or a rifle or an arrow, it just seems to be like it's going to do damage randomly to your team. The power shot fires a bolt of lightning through the target. So he picks a random target, right? And boom, whoever's in his path gets hit by it. It's not very easy to tell where he's facing, especially with a lot of visual noise that can happen depending on what classes are in your team. So I highly recommend Sand Sweat Marksman being your priority target whenever it is in a pack. So you usually pull these 3, Obelisk down to here. Again, Sand Sweat Marksman, usually you'll get this patrol here with it. Still, I would just highly recommend Sand Sweat Marksman to just get that power, what's it called, power shot? Yeah, get that power shot just out of the way. You don't want to deal with that mechanic anymore as a healer, as a Discipline Priest healer. This one you just pull by itself to just don't stand in its frontal cone with Noxious Breath. Then you usually take the Obelisk, take Obelisk over here. Usually you skip that and go down to here. This one, I would recommend, it's kind of hard, probably this guy, because he does lightning in a bottle. I guess I would recommend your Incubators, because they do the lightning in a bottle, so it just does caster hurl the vial that unleashes an electric field on the ground. Players who stand in the field suffer X amount of damage. So sometimes, the reason I recommend it, it is avoidable, but sometimes, like these guys all patrol around the area. See, everything with the blue circle light, they patrol, right? That's 4 mobs that patrol. So if you're trying to avoid lightning in a bottle, and you're like, okay, I can't stand here, but if I back up, I'm going to pull a patrol. So situations like that is what you gotta think about. So I would recommend taking down Incubator first as being your Schism or priority target. Tenders are all the same. Incubator again. Yeah, I just recommend if the Incubator's in your party, if the Incubator's in your pool, I highly recommend just taking out that Incubator. Let's see here. This is kind of a tough one. Does big tank damage. This one does AoE damage. So I would recommend picking your Agitated Nimbus. Pick one because release charge, even if there are no stacks of charges, he's still going to do AoE damage to your team. As a priest or Discipline Priest, as a priest in general, we can dispel his stacks, so we can reduce that AoE damage going out, but the AoE damage is still AoE damage, so I'd recommend just picking a Nimbus and going for it. Same thing here. And then these guys are all the same, but they do a shit ton of damage in AoE, so just pick whoever has the highest health and use that one to heal your team through it. Usually this gets pulled here. Usually gets pulled with like another, they're not showing. I've actually never noticed that. They don't show the orb, whatever mob the elite mob that spawn here that chase the orb guy. I don't remember the name of them. But I would recommend killing if you do pull this with trying to do an eye at the same time and you're spawning like the elite mobs that chase down the orbs, I highly recommend going for those orb chases because they're the ones slowing you down from doing the mechanic and progressing through the dungeon faster. This guy just does, let's see, spark, shock, let's go. Right here, call lightning. This one, like, it's easily, blue squirrels on the ground, step out of the way. That's it, easily avoidable. The orb chasers, I don't know, I guess that's their name right now. The orb chasers, they literally try to prevent you from going through with the rest of the dungeon by taking these eyeballs and running back to where you get them from. So I'd recommend taking them down first. So you take the obelisk, usually all the way down here. Pick a hexer and just kill it. Lava burst, flame shock, they do good depending on who's getting hit, it does damage. But they're all the same. Just pick whoever has the highest health and go for it. So when you're in phase 2 of this boss, or the last phase of this boss, when you have the boss debuff to the show, empowerment. When you have empowerment, this usually gets pulled. And actually, you know what? Forget anything about it. Once you have empowerment, you don't take damage. You reduce damage by 90%. You don't need to worry about anything at that point. So take that back. Once you get to the empowerment stage, most teams pull this 3-pack. I mean, sometimes they'll come up and pull here if they need to, which is, I've seen it like once, but very, very low amount of times it happens like that. But it doesn't really matter who you pick because everyone's empowered, no one's taking damage, just kill the crap as fast as you can. Motherload, this is going to be a doozy, isn't it? Maybe not. Non-elites, and you have one elite here. I would recommend the refreshment vendor, just because sometimes people miss kicks on the ice spritzer somehow. They miss a stun, they miss whatever. And if that is missed, and someone they're taking damage gain channel, and if the channel goes fully through, then they're frozen. You can dispel it, but it's just an extra global cooldown you don't need to spend if the mob is just dead. So if you have these, if you have your ice or the vendors in any of your pulls, I recommend doing that. This guy just does a clothesline or frontal charge to just get out of the way. I'm pretty sure this is a choreographed move. So yeah, vendor again, then usually take the obelisk. Depending if it's tyrannical, usually you'll lust on the boss, then come back and pull mobs. Or if it's fortified, you might do a lust with 3 pulls here, and then take the obelisk somewhere over here, and then pull until you get lust for the boss again. Really depends on your team. But again, whenever you have non-elites with an elite pack, you pick the elite, and that's your priority target. If you get a pull like this one here, where you have this 3-pack here, the assassins and the thug, I highly recommend the assassin for Hall of Flechette. I think that's how it's pronounced. I don't know. Flechette. This is, you can fear it, you can knock it, you can stun it, but sometimes your team is just not ready for it, and this is big AoE damage, especially if Toxic Blaze does not get kicked. So I highly recommend your assassins if they're in the pull. I would recommend assassins over refreshment vendor. So if you have a pull where you have if you have an assassin and a refreshment vendor, highly recommend assassin being your priority / schism targets to get that potential AoE damage out of the way. Just get that out of the way. Let's see. Then these guys, I mean, really just whoever has the highest health. That's just going to be your, everything in here. Whoever has the highest health is just going to be your priority target. No one does anything really crazy. Maybe the guys who do the rock lance because tank damage, and they reduce the healing taken. So that's stuff you might want to get out of the way. So I would recommend that. But if it's a big ass pull, go for the Earth Shapers. Hopefully your team is kicking, and hopefully your team is doing a good job with that. But yeah, I'd recommend Earth Shapers first. Oh, not that. No. Yeah, Earth Shaper in this pull. I go back on that. Just if you have Earth Shaper, kill the Earth Shaper. You want the Earth Shaper's dead. Let's see. So you usually take the Obelisk. We pull this pack, then take the Obelisk all the way up here. Usually pull that. Blah blah blah. Then usually you come and pull. I think it's this pack right here. Yeah. I would recommend Blowtorch just because it's kind of like that frontal cone that sometimes people just don't tend to like pay attention to, and they just kind of let it tick off instead of trying to interrupt it. So like pretty much the name of the game, if you guys have been paying attention, is a mob that could potentially do AoE damage that your team might not be ready for or just like negligent to. That's kind of like the priority target also. Like it's just kind of a good general rule of thumb. If there's going to be potential for big AoE damage going out to your team, you want that mob off the map. So yeah, that would be that one. Then you take the Obelisk all the way over here, do the boss. This one I would just recommend, I guess, just a big health mob. This is kind of similar, like they're both elites, but this one's just more of an elite, if that makes sense. That's pretty much it. Nothing here does anything too crazy. Just whoever has the highest health, go for that. And then usually by that point you have 100%, and you go to the Obelisk, and then you go to the boss and crush it. Underrot. This one is fun. I really like Underrot. I personally pick Fetid Maggot. Usually it's like a pull, like usually that's your first pull. I mean, I know some keys will like CC that and then pull like that together as your first pull. But let's assume you're not playing MDI or a good team like that. So you do this first. I recommend Maggot because for whatever reason, people don't want to stun or knock or do anything to stop this. And again, the general rule of thumb, it's just a frontal cone of damage. Just, you don't want to have to deal with that. Then for here, I recommend Blood Priest because these Dark Reconstruction, Gift of Cahoon, just annoying mechanics. If the cast goes off, then you're like, oh crap, like the mob's gonna take a little bit longer. These guys, the Hook Snare, is very annoying to deal with. It does pretty good damage, but it's not like unbearable. Making a pack last longer, potentially with Gift of Cahoon. This is what that's a priority target. The Blood Priest here is gonna be a priority target. Here, I mean, they're all the same, so I mean, whatever. If you're pulling this again, Blood Priest, because you don't want the pack to live longer. You don't want the pack to live any longer than it has to. So this is what you'd want to delete. And then sometimes that's pulled, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just you skip that, take that there. Then usually you skip all through this and you pick these three. Sometimes you pick the 2. And if you do get the 5-pack like that, I recommend killing the Disease Lashers for Decaying Mind. I mean, sometimes people just miss that interrupt. But yeah, I recommend just, if that gets pulled, go for the Disease Lashers. These guys just do avoidable damage. If you get a pack with, anytime you have a pack with a Feral Bloodswarmer in it, that's your priority target. This whole general rule of thumb for this whole place is Bloodswarmer. It's kind of tough because sometimes you get a pack with a Maggot and a Bloodswarmer, and you know, like, your team is so worried about the Bloodswarmer, they're missing this. They're missing the Rotten Biles going out. So if you're in a confident space, right, or confident like time in the run, this mob is at like 10% health and this one's at like 40, switch over to this one to try and get it out of the way. I would recommend Bloodswarmer first, and if it's at low HP, then Maggot. If they're both pulled at the same exact time, both at 100%, it's kind of tough. I think I'd recommend Bloodswarmer first, and then Maggot. Because Maggot is avoidable. It's kind of hard to tell which way he's facing, but it is avoidable. Bloodswarmer is kind of avoidable too, but he just fixates and just crushes whoever he's fixating. I mean, you can knock, fear, stun, whatever. You can do all that good stuff to it, but if like your team doesn't have any of that ready, then that person's just getting chunked. So that's it for that room. This pull here with the skeletons and the Death Speaker, I recommend Death Speaker being your priority target for Wicked Frenzy purposes. Or Wicked Assault, I'm sorry, Wicked Assault. Get that out of the way. Usually it's just a one pull for the worm. Again, Fallen Death Speaker. Pick either one here, or the Bloodsworn Defiler. Pick either one. Same thing. If these both get pulled at the same time, which is a common practice, I highly recommend the Defiler because of some Spirit Drain Totem. Pretty much is like an instant one kill or instant one shot if it goes off and you're in the 6 yard range of it. I would recommend if they do a double pull here, this is your priority target, Defiler. Usually this gets pulled also. You want to do Death Speaker. Sometimes teams come over here to play this and they don't want to play an Obelisk with the last boss, which is fine, but I've seen shit shows where you get all of this, right? And if you do get all that, like, Defiler's got to be the one. Defiler's got to be the one, in my opinion, for the priority target. Hopefully your team is not doing that and they're waiting for the patrol, or they drop a mob over here and just 1, 1, 1, 1. You know, hopefully do something smart, but smart pugs are kind of hard to come by sometimes. So if you happen to be in that shit situation, I recommend Defiler being your priority target. And that is it for Underrot. On to Toll de Gore. I don't like this dungeon. Okay, if we're here, for all this, I recommend doing the alligators, that being your priority target. 1, they have higher health. 2, they do that massive chomp that reduces your tank's health, and you don't want that. The crabs, they do the squeeze with that. You can fear, kick, stun, whatever. We can't kick, but you can fear, stun, displace, whatever, and stop that from casting. So I recommend the alligator for anything here. So then we go forward. Obelisk is usually taken to about this area. Again, if you get a pull like this or something, just highly recommend the gator. This guy though, Debilitating Shout, I don't know why, but it goes off a lot more than I thought it would in pugs. But it does, and everyone just does less damage, and you have to massive spell it to get everything off. But still, if they're pulled together, I just recommend the Vice Jaw being your primary target. Everything else in this dungeon, really? Like, no one does, like, there's just a lot of just, like, junk mobs, if that makes any sense. Just, like, mobs that just, like, oh, like, I'm a non-elite, and I'm like 10 non-elites by 1 elite, it's just kind of crap. None of these mobs really do anything worthwhile that's like, oh shit, I need to get that deleted, So the same rule of thumb here. If you get some non-elites with elites, your elite's going to be your priority target. If you get this pack, highly recommend the Sea Speaker being your priority target, either one, but usually that is skipped. And usually you're up here, but you're in this pack here. Sea Speaker, those are going to be your priority targets. Over here, your elites are going to be priority targets. Over here, elites are going to be priority targets. Over here, I recommend again your Sea Speaker. They do big damage with Salt Blast, and then they prevent damage with Watery Dump. So this whole floor, Sea Speaker is your priority target. Let's see. Again, here just be a elite versus non-elite. Up here again, I recommend this guy because debilitating shout. If you have this 3-pack here, because of this debilitating shout. Holy crap, debilitating shout. Recommend that being your priority target if you play this pack there. If you're up here, I recommend this one. I recommend you picking the range, the shooter. Almost always it's going to be the shooter. Almost always it's going to be melee as like the last, as far as the priority totem goes. So then normally that's it for this, and you usually take the obelisk, and normally take the obelisk all the way out. And then from here you're usually playing with the cannons. But let's assume you're not playing with any cannons for whatever reason. Again, your marines, your shooters, those are going to be your priority target. I mean, these guys do riot shield handcuffs, that's no big deal. Again, potential for big AoE damage for the team is suppression fire, so you want that off the table. And that's just true for the whole floor up here and for the rest of the dungeon. That's it. For Waycrest Manor, normally all these are pulled. They're all the same mobs, so I don't really have to worry about focusing any of them down. Normally the play is to take this obelisk all the way over to the witches. Sometimes I've seen the obelisk taken to the courtyard. But let's assume you're going to the witches. So you go to the witches, an elite with a bunch of non-elites, so elite's your priority target, same thing on this side, and then the witches are the witches. Then here, I would just recommend the higher health mob. They all kind of have their own little like quirks to them, I guess. But I would just overall recommend just highest health mob in this general area. Normally, this pack of pairs usually never pulled. This is sometimes pulled, usually it's by accident. But yeah, normally it's recommend the higher health mobs out of here. Same thing here. You got an elite with a non-elite. You have the wolves running around. These two here, I would recommend doing the Thorn Guard over this one. This one just pretty much does like the uproot is kind of your main damage mechanic, but that's easily avoidable. And if you do get hit, it doesn't like chunk you that hard. So I would just recommend Thorn Guard being your priority target there. Sometimes this gets pulled, and if it does get pulled, I would recommend Thorn Guard again. Here I got two of the same Thorn Shapers, doesn't matter. Here, obviously elite your priority versus non-elites. Here, it really depends on how this pull is done, but none of them really do much damage. Minus, where are they at? Glove? No. Pallid Gorger, here we go. These Pallid Gorgers, the Ravaging Leaps, they leaps to the farthest target, here you go, and attacks all nearby enemies within 5 yards, blah, blah, blah. So, if you're the farthest target, you're going to be taking the most damage, so you can kind of bait that away so you can stand the furthest away and make sure your DPS players are not near you, and that way you can just soak it yourself, and that way you know what's coming to hit you. You can try and dodge it. I believe you can just step out of its way. But if you want to play like a meta tactic, right here, there's a fountain. You can jump on top of the fountain and you LOS it pretty much. There's no way for this Gorger to jump at you. It just doesn't do it. Very similar to mobs in Otaldazar. So if you're in a somewhat coordinated group where you have the time to type to your tank, like, hey, can you pull these Gorgers out into the courtyard so I can bait them to the fountain and, we're not getting hurt. That's pretty much it for these guys. I mean, Snap Smack kind of hurts sometimes, but that's nothing like crazy. This is a problematic mob, but not really. If it's infected, it explode, boom, more mobs come out of it. Excuse me. Nothing too crazy with it. It's just a little extra to deal with. Once the mob dies, you have more mobs coming out of it. And here, Pallid Gorger, again, is the one you want to kill. That's your priority target, Pallid Gorger. Yeah. Pallid Gorger is pretty much your go-to, because that's just the one that's going to the furthest target, going to slap everyone within 5 yards, and that's it. And here you want to do the witches, or the witch. Let me go downstairs. Normally sometimes it's full, sometimes it's not. But non-elites with the elite, so you do that. Then you go downstairs again. This is mostly skipped. Sometimes I've seen it pulled for big count, but let's assume you got your count elsewhere, and you skip it with the obelisk. Come down here, again, elites, non-elites, those are priority, blah, blah. Hopefully, if you have to pull this for extra count, then you do what you have to do. But there is no priority target here. There's plays to be made where you would tank all these back over here somewhere, LOS, all the range would stand on a ledge over here, and they won't leap to the range players, and they'll just mostly leap to the tank, and the tank is just going to take all that damage. And then that's pretty much it for Waycrest Manor. Junkyard it's, how do I put it? It's It's a fun dungeon, that's for sure. There's a lot of mobs that just like there's a lot of kind of. It seems like there's always different mobs. It seems like there's different mobs in every pack. Like none of them are really just like outstandingly like this is the mob that I can think of besides these guys here, the weaponized crawlers, because of shock coil. That is just AoE damage that's going out that you just have to heal through. Can't stun it, can't knock it, can't fear it, can't interrupt it, can't whatever. It's just AoE damage that is going to happen, and you just got to be ready for it. And you have the weaponized crawlers. Usually people skip this one here, but you will have it again over here. That's normally pulled, and up here. There's a few mobs down here I like to talk about. Mainly, so the no meaning slimes, there we go. AoE damage. AoE damage, they spawn some more themselves and then do more AoE damage. These are Slime Wave, Slime Bolt. These are kind of problematic. Out of all these mobs out here, I would say Slime Elementals are going to be your priority target. Here, if you do pull this 3-pack, you want to kill the Renormalizer because of this ability here, Shrink. You don't want that going off, and if it does go off, you want it dead so it doesn't go off again, and you just want to do what you can and not have that go off too many times. It's completely interruptible, so hopefully your team's on top of it. If you're up here, Trooper, Prowler. Prowler does a pounce. I mean, neither of these like hurt very much. Maybe Nano Slicer, but again, nothing too crazy that's like, okay, this is what you need to handle. If for some reason you pull this patrol or you need it for your count or whatever, your cavalry, the rapid fire, he charges to the rapid fire. Turns around, it's completely avoidable, completely easy to avoid too, but it's just something, it's like one of those frontal cones that your team might just not be very aware of, and they just get destroyed by it. So that would be something you'd want to look into as far as like your priority target. This dungeon is just kind of like so playground style. Like there's just so many pulls you can make here. So it's hard to go over every single one. So this is like just stuff like I've seen that I normally see in pugs. And for this whole area, let's see. One of them does something. Running gun, grenade, no. They all do the same, just different names. I would say probably this one, just because it does the overclock and repair. It's just pretty much like their support style guy, so you don't want them to get any more buffs than they already are. But also, if you feel like your team's on top of that, you might want to take down these guys because they do the running gun, and they just go to some stupid lengths away from you and just start blasting your team. So sometimes it might just be they're not getting the damage from the team, and you're the only one who can hit them, and you're hitting them and you're healing your team. Let's see, the Scrap Hounds I recommend being your priority target because of Bork. Let's see. Scrapper. I just recommend, again, the utility guy. Here you have two same mobs, so you just pick one. Here, same mob, pick one, bunch of non-elite, so you kill the elite. Same thing over here, non-elite, so you kill the elite. Bully, I would recommend because of the frontal cone. Again, the frontal cone is a reoccurring theme. It's avoidable, but sometimes people don't avoid it, and then they get destroyed. So I'd recommend that one when you see a bully in your pack. Sometimes this is all pulled actually, and again, out of this pack here, specifically grinders, I would recommend this. Again, like it's going back to the old like caster versus melee. Usually the caster does like some type of disorienting thing to the team that you don't want to have to deal with. So you want the mob to be dead sooner than the rest of them. So Discipline Priest, this is going to be your priority target in this pack here. The rest is just bullies, trash house or whatever, grinder, nothing. We're gonna same old. And that's pretty much it for Junkyard. Like, there are just so many combinations of pulls that can be done here. Like, I've even been with a team that's pulled all this stuff in here, which is really weird. Up here, there's really not much going on. They're all kind of the same. I would maybe recommend this guy. I don't know. Maybe this guy. Like nothing too crazy up here again. Nothing like, if you happen to pull the renormalizer, this is the one you want to, if you happen to pull all this for count or whatever, normally it's like these ones highlighted usually what I see that is needed for the count, plus the obelisk. When you get over here, you get the obelisk, or you kill the obelisk, and that usually puts you at 100. But if that's not your team and you pull this, again, renormalizer, you want to get those out of the way to avoid the shrink mechanic. And now that is pretty much it for Junkyard. And last but not least, we're on to Workshop. And Workshop is pretty much straightforward, as straightforward as it gets. Let's assume your team is not doing the mechanic where you take all these guys, slam them with a hammer, and then they're dead. Let's assume you're not. You want bomb tonks, those are going to be your first priority targets. Those are going to be your priority targets, bomb tonks. Then you're going to go to rocket tonk. Then after that, you're going to go stratatonk. There's 2 of each, so pick one of these, then the last one, then one of these, and the last one, so on and so forth. So you go down. Usually these are pulled together, processing unit. Pick one, priority target, whichever one has a higher HP. Normally you take this over here, do boss, so you can start back pulling. Dog. Usually this dog and this waste processing unit, usually they're pulled together. I would kill the dog first because of this. The dispel that you have to, your random teammate's going to get afflicted by this. You want to dispel it. It does a decent amount of damage, nothing too crazy, but it is just an extra annoyance that you might not want to deal with, so you want to kill it faster. Then these guys, usually they're pulled like these are all like enemies pulled. Here you're going to use the dog because it's just the elite versus the non-elites, and especially because when these things explode, or when they're dying, here you go, after dying the caster inflicts X amount of damage, nature damage, all enemies within 100 yards. It's huge. So if for whatever reason someone is not line of sighting with one of like the poles over here, you're going to want to have this guy to be your priority target and you're healing off of it. Alright, so we do the chain belt, and now we're up here. And normally, oh, you're down here. Sorry. We're gonna assume your team's not allowing you to mind control the Tinkerer, so you can use the Squirrel. We're gonna assume they're not doing that. So if they're not doing that, the Tinkerers are your priority targets, and then when they're dead, defense spot, all 3 are the same, then you have this one. So in the first pull here, highly recommend Tinkerers being your target. Then you got the obelisk, so you do the obelisk, take usually to the boss, kill the boss. So you do the boss. Okay, done. They come up here, same thing. I would recommend these guys actually truck if you're not standing in the shield. But I still recommend your Tinkerer. Just that Giga Wallop is going to do walloping damage. And then here you got like enemies, so you pull those, and then when you're done with that, you're over here. Again, same thing. Tinkerer out of this pack. If you have this with it, I still recommend Tinkerer, and just stand in the shield to avoid this guy's AoE damage. Actually, I take that back, because the Arcing Zap, this one actually does hurt a lot. So I do recommend this is going to be your go-to, and same thing back over here. These are going to be your go-tos to kill faster. And guys, that is it. All this stuff is normally not pulled in most keys. Then you take the obelisk, and you skip it all over here. You crush it, and you +2 the freaking, 19 or 20 that you're on. But guys, that is it. This is a long one. Thank you for sticking through it. Hopefully you did stick all the way through it. Hopefully you got some tips and some useful information out of this, and hopefully you're like, okay, like now I can look at NDT and be like, okay, now I can kind of plan out my route, how I want to use my Schism windows, how I want to use my Rapture windows, whatever. Hopefully this just helped you out in some way, shape, or form. If it did, let me know. If there's some things you want to hear differently, or you have some questions about some of the dungeons, like a mob maybe I didn't go over that you normally see pulled, let me know, and I'll love to get back to you guys. Again, hopefully you guys stick through this the whole way. Thank you all for watching.